call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. The board would like to welcome the audience and thanks you for attending. Viewers may watch Board of Education meetings and board committee meetings live at tcaps.net/board. Recorded meetings may be viewed on demand at the same address. Please rise and join Miss Ross's kindergarten class at Easton Elementary in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we had the review approval portion of the agenda.
I would like to make a change to the agenda.
Okay.
I'd like to move item D2 under discussion to consent. I'm sorry. It's D1 from discussion to consent D2.
Okay, and that was how it was sent from the finance committee, and I believe at the executive committee we accidentally either didn't move it or we put it on the wrong one, so. So I do have D1 moving to consent.
That's the transportation, school bus
school buses.
purchase.
I'd like to remove B3.
From consent.
Yes.
I will find it at some point then.
That's firearms and weapons policy.
What's that?
That's the firearms and weapons policy, correct?
Okay, B3. Okay, I'll get to reorder this in a second after I get the other changes. So I'll move that one onto discussion. I do also have an additional discussion item that I will suggest putting as item A, and then we'll bump everything else down, which is meeting schedule. We've got a lot of things to figure out with meetings, so I'd like to put that as A so we can get that done. Because it may affect some other discussion items. So if that became A, everything else would go down one, C, D, E, and F. And then item B3 off of the consent would go to item G. Any other changes?
Policy under discussion, which is C, if you want to just add it to
Oh, thank you.
8.
So yeah, so we will, that works, so yes, thank you, that will be, I think, easier too. So we'll scratch it from the consent calendar, we will move it to the discussion item that's already on for board policy, which is now section D. And that can just go in as an additional item. So it'll be item D8. It will become D8. Okay. After we get through the, so do I have a motion to, or any other changes, but motion to approve as amended?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Stacey, please conduct a roll call vote. I think, oh, sorry. Sorry. Tammy, please conduct a roll call vote. It'll take me a while.
Trustee Ballinger,
Yes.
trustee Raymond,
Yes.
trustee Byrd,
Yes.
trustee Pack,
Yes.
trustee Schmidt,
Yes.
and trustee Newman Bale.
Yes, motion carries. So moving on to the next discussion item, recognition to find Dr. Wagon.
Okay, so tonight, we originally were going to have possibly, I'd let you know, the West High School STEM group. They wanted to wait until maybe the opening of the STEM labs with that. So we'll see from them little later, but tonight we do have our next round of TCAPS Compass Award winners. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Connie Taylor to introduce our award winners.
Thank you so much. For tonight, if you are present in the room when we call your name, will you please stand while we read your recognition? And then when we're done, you can have a seat, and then when everyone is done, we'll call you all up to receive your certificates, and we'll get a picture with you and the Board of Education, okay? We're gonna start out tonight with our winner from the AFSCME group, Gary Garvin. Sure, Gary is with us. All right. Gary's not here, but I am going to tell you about him. His nominee says Gary cares. I remember when Gary started for TCAPS in 2000. From when he started at the high school third shift to lead position at Cortade, ask anyone, Gary was always there to do his best. He's the grounds department now and never leaves until the job is done and done to the best of his abilities. He's always looking out for the safety of staff and students. He's been with TCAPS for 24 years. He's put in 100% in everything that he's done. His endless hours and dedication is worthy of this honor. He arrives early and leaves late. Why? Because he cares. He cares about the job, he cares about the way things look, and most of all, he cares about the safety of teachers, staff, and students. When he was the lead at custodian for many years, the students at the secondary school now see him and remember him. He's done something positive to make them students come up to say, hello, Mr. Gary. We honor Gary Garvin. Our next winner is Matthew O'Brien, bus driver. Best nominator said that he's always willing to jump in and help where needed. He helps staff around facilities and transportation all the time. He's extraordinarily reliable with outstanding attendance. He also volunteers for extra work. He pre-trips an extra bus every morning. He's a great role model for students and very seldom has disciplinary issues on his bus. His calm demeanor helps him work great with our elementary students. Also, because of his knowledge and attention to detail, he's part of the state police pre-inspection team, and he goes through every bus and inspects them for our mechanics. And lastly, he transports students for SSN. He's a strong and consistent presence for the students who need him most. Congratulations, Matt. All right. Our next honoree is Emily Dillinger-Witt from TCEA. Emily's an instructional coach at Blair Elementary. She goes above beyond being an integral part of our school. Her commitment to improving her practice in order to support the development of our teachers is inspiring. Emily aspires leaders follow through the TCAPS Teach America program and also as a member of the Blair leadership team. She serves as a district ELA curriculum coordinator and stepped up to serve as administrator for Blair's summer school program, to absolute rave reviews, they might add. Emily's impact is so much greater than she realizes. Within our building, she's a trusted advisor for staff. They seek her out to bounce ideas, receive feedback, and learn. Emily has done an amazing job cultivating relationships within the building and beyond. Her work as summer school administrator absolutely stands out. The staff loved working for her, and she helped to create a fun, family-like environment. Most importantly, our students reported having so much fun. The staff and students alike thoroughly enjoyed summer school as a testament to her vision and leadership. I'm proud and honored to work alongside Emily. Congratulations. Our next honoree is Ryan Rager, lead principal at East Middle School. His nomination, it says, is with great enthusiasm that I recommend Ryan Rager for the Compass Award. In his new role as lead principal at East Middle School, he has consistently demonstrated the exceptional leadership, dedication, and positive impact that this award celebrates. He has fostered a positive, welcoming environment at East Middle School. He's known for his approachable demeanor, creating a space where students, staff, and parents feel comfortable sharing ideas and concerns. This open communication style has been instrumental in building trust and collaboration with the school community. Ryan's commitment to fairness is evident in all of his interactions. He consistently applies policies and procedures equitably, ensuring that all students have access to the resources and support they need to succeed. This commitment to fairness has fostered a sense of respect and belonging among students and staff alike. Ryan is incredibly hardworking and dedicated individual. He's often the first to arrive and the last to leave, demonstrating a tireless work ethic in his pursuit of excellence for East Middle School. He actively participates in school events, engages with students in the classroom, and is visible and supportive presence throughout the building. Congratulations, Ryan. Next, we have Shelley Burden with our non-affiliated support childcare. Shelley is the toddler manager at TCAPS Montessori School. Miss Shelley is the beloved lead teacher guide in our community and has been for the past 7 years. Shelley is very committed not only to Montessori methodology, but also the program she has helped curate. Recently, Shelley has graciously taken on a position to mentor our new toddler team. She does this on her own time. She has provided training and professional learning to her team to help them better understand Montessori education and the school culture. Shelley is a true Montessorian. She encompasses grace, courtesy, and peace in all that she does. She's a true advocate for early childhood education and the parents in our community. She understands that this expertise for our family is far more than just school. It is creating an environment where students and families feel nurtured, safe, and connected. She celebrates all that is good in TCAP's strategic plan for SEL learning and our district's very youngest learners. Congratulations, Shelley. Next, we have Ken O'Brien, building manager for facilities. Ken has always been a person I rely on to lend a listening and understanding ear. That is hard to find in a leader nowadays. He responds to my emails and texts timely. I feel comfortable sharing anything with him, whether it's simple facilities needs or a personal issue. I feel it's important to have the open two-way communication relationship with management and staff, and Ken does exactly that. Empowering others by giving staff resources when he can and supporting them to take ownership of their work. He engages in transparency. He builds trust and the credibility by ensuring that his staff members are informed and involved and values their opinions. He also demonstrates empathy. Ken can see things from the team members as well as management side and takes into account ideas from both. Ken has calm, relaxed demeanor that is perfect for the job he does and for the people he manages. Congratulations, Ken. Next is Christine Novak, food service kitchen leader at Long Lake Elementary. Christine goes above and beyond each day for the students at our school. She's a wonderful person to work for and makes the days fly by with laughter and love for what we do. Christine not only ensures that every child receives a nutritious meal, but also creates a warm and welcoming environment where students feel cared for and valued. Her leadership inspires the team to work together seamlessly, and her positive attitude is contagious. She handles challenges with grace and always finds ways to make the cafeteria a bright spot in everyone's day. Christine's hard work and compassion make a real difference in the lives of both students and staff, and we're lucky to have her. Christine is dedicated to making sure that every child gets the nourishment they need while ensuring that students have access to the same quality meals regardless of where they are in line. She's especially vigilant when it comes to the safety of students with allergies, always double checking ingredients daily, even for familiar products, to prevent any risk. Her commitment to detail and student well-being is unmatched, and her compassion makes her an exceptional leader. I feel truly fortunate to work alongside someone who cares so deeply about the students and our team. Congratulations, Christine. And lastly, we have Kristen Harnish, TCAPS, Special Education Aide, Eastern Elementary School. Our nomination states, I want to recognize the special ed and behavior team at Eastern. The work that they do is so important and they all excel at it. To pick one person would be difficult since they function as the team. This group is so observing and I hope you'll consider recommending them as a group. Christine inspires others with how to approach their job. There are days that are pretty challenging, but she does not let a hard day impact the next day. She starts each day fresh, which is important for the students. She's a fierce advocate for her students. She supports TCAPS by supporting students. She makes her team stronger not only by improving the educational outcome, but also showing true acceptance for all students and displaying a recognition that each student brings something special to our community. All students should be valued, and she demonstrates this each day. The impact that she has on the school is invaluable. The world of education is rewarding, but it's also hard. The work that she and the team does and the attitude in which they do it helps everyone come to work each day with a positive outlook. We feel fortunate to work with Christine and the team, and Christine is lucky to have them. Congratulations. And if all of the award winners will please come up front and be recognized by the Board of Education.
Okay, that's what I said.
Thank you for doing last time it was a little.
Got you.
It's a nice, just kind of a nomination from somebody who would be bad, nostalgia. But to get it from somebody that works for you, it's huge. I didn't say hi yet. How are you?
I figured I'd see you after.
Stacy.
I don't think I'm very much needed anymore, but I'm just gonna get one more in.
No. What's that picture of?
Funny, you didn't mess up one time, but you know.
Oh, yes, I am.
No, well, it didn't seem like it. I'd be like, Liv.
And you know,
You get-
and then I didn't realize until I get in here, your eyes are so strong, but you're tired.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I
I should
will,
have
I will, there's a lot of reading.
As people filter out, that's fine. Go ahead and say the next item on the agenda is public comment. And the board has set aside this time for public comment, and individuals addressing the board shall have one opportunity to speak, which shall be limited to 3 minutes. Individuals should not make personal attacks unrelated to actions affecting the school system, and we strongly encourage common courtesy and constructive feedback. Detailed rules and procedures, including complaint process, are outlined in Board Policy 2504. Tammy?
The first comment would be Scott Richards.
Scott Richards from Green Lake Township. America spends, the United States of America spends the most amount of money than 40 other industrial nations, but our students rate 38. So I'd like to know why the discrepancy. I would like to see our students are going to spend the most money on education, which should be at the top of the list. The other thing I'd like to talk about is these books. Red, white, and royal blue. Gender queer. Foxy crap. All boys aren't blue. These books don't need to be in education department or in our high school libraries. It's pornography. If the kids want to look up pornography, they can do it on their own. Taxpayer money does not need to be spent on it. The other thing I'd like to talk about is Jordan DeMay of Marquette, Michigan. Jordan DeMay is a very sad story, and a lot of people get caught up in that, especially, hormones are going crazy and sad. The last thing I'd like to talk about is the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting any establishment of religion. Some people think that's freedom. You know why that came about? Because the Danbury Baptists got a hold of Thomas Jefferson because they were afraid that the government would push a one denomination religion. Like these pilgrims and these Puritans that came across the sea, they were fleeing religious persecution. Like, maybe the Queen of France was Catholic, so you couldn't be Lutheran in France. They would take your property and kick you out on the streets. Or maybe the King of England was a Church of England, so you can't be Catholic. So he'd kick all the Catholics out and take their property. That's why freedom of religion came in to the First Amendment. It wasn't to take religion out of government. I think the most integrity, honest people, which are Christians usually, because they answer to God, should be in government. Look at our government. Look at all the waste that's coming out from Elon Musk. And boys do not need to be in girls' sports. Boys have bigger hearts, they have bigger lung capacities, they got more muscle mass. They should not be competing against female students. Trump was right, there's only two genders, male and female.
The next is Sebastian Eaton Ellison.
So I'm a senior at West High School. I'm also in the health sciences program at CTC, but I'm also a member of NTHS, Westmen, Chorale, Model UN, the MSVMA, Boy Scouts of America, have 2 jobs, and I'm also the president of West's GSA. Apparently, some members of the community believe that we are promoting suicide or promoting gay sex. I'm sorry, that cannot be further from the truth. I've been hospitalized for suicidal thoughts. I've been hospitalized for suicidal actions. And a community that has been created by our GSA has helped save my life, and it's supported by many of our educators here. I'm bisexual and have a boyfriend. A lot of people say I'm confused or natural and I get called slurs and receive death threats often just for existing, even by many adults in our communities. This has been happening to me since, 10 or 11, I would say. And the whole time I knew many of those in power either supported it or did not care. And it was made even more clear when I was 13 at West Middle School when rocks were thrown at me. Well, I would say the size of my fist, they were thrown at my head. And when myself and others reported it, we were told by principals and staff that, oh no, they were just calling me happy, and that's how they showed that they wanted to be my friends. Do you guys think that's true? And that was made, do you think they wanted to be my friend when another student with a Trump flag on the back of their truck tried to follow me home after school? What about when I was pushed up in the wall of the bathroom at West Senior High by 2 kids and choked? And the whole time, nothing. I get called slurs walking to class on a normal basis. Issues like this are ignored and put off by a lot of teachers. And frankly, most administrators at the lower levels. Yes, there are teachers like Mr. Wangerman, Ms. Cole, Mr. Gillespie, and Ms. Minor, who coincidentally is here today, who they'll do anything they can to address it, but nothing's done. The Department of Education stated that they no longer support us by removing Title IX protections to those like myself and many I know who are gender non-conforming. This is why we need an organization like our GSA now more than ever, so people know that they're not alone, so they know that there are people who support them, even when our government bodies refuse. Our GSA will be there to support them. We have created a safe space where people can have fun, where people can be safe, and a space where hopefully, like with what happened to me, can help save their life.
Next is Jordan Teasdale.
My name is Jordan Teasdale. I use any pronouns, and I'm currently a senior, and I've been a student at West in 7th grade. I had to leave West last year because of the sheer amount of bullying I was enduring. It was so mentally straining, I felt like I was going to kill myself. I did not receive any support from any staff during this time. The bullying I have endured while being at TCAPS schools is degrading, and I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemies. I've had slurs yelled at me, I've had items and food thrown at me in the cafeteria, I've been barked at. all while just trying to mind my own business. All in front of staff members, mind you. And these staff members did absolutely nothing. I know many other students who have experienced the same thing as me, and like me, have not received any support. My mom has had to call the school. My dad has had to call the school. My sister has had to send an email to the principal outlining exactly what has been happening to me, just to be told, we'll look into it. We'll look into it. It was never looked into. I was brushed off and I was ignored. And I was forgotten. You all ignore the bullying and tell me and other students like me that the things being screamed at us in the hallway, you tell us to not give them any power and that words will never hurt us. And yet these words are slowly destroying us mentally and slowly killing student souls, making them feel worthless and making them not even want to show their faces at school. The GSA is meant to support queer students who feel like they have nowhere to go. And the fact there are people who think that we want to push students to hurt themselves is disgusting. The GSA was made to uplift, support, inspire, and give a voice to queer students who feel as if they've been silenced their whole life. We won't be ignored, and our voices will not be silenced any longer. Thank you for your time.
Next is Brace Kern.
So I'm here to talk about Wilbur the therapy dog at Westwoods Elementary School. So I live by the dog. Two of my kids go to the school there, and I walk my dog regularly along Fisher Road, and this dog attacked my dog. So I looked into it a little bit further, and and talked to the owner of the dog and said, I don't think it's appropriate the dog goes to school anymore, considering it's showing a propensity for violence. And the person doesn't want to take the dog out of the school. And so I looked into a little bit more to figure out how the dog got allowed in the school in the first place. And there's an application from 23 to 24 and an application from 24 to 25. And on both those applications to be a therapy dog here at TCAPS, they indicated that the dog is a mixed breed, is all it said. And the certificate of insurance that they supply to you to prove that they are insured and the dog is covered says that the dog is a Labrador Retriever mix. The dog's veterinarian records that are also part of the FOIA to TCAPS shows that the vet knows it's a pit bull. It is a pit bull. And I believe the owner is not telling you it's a pit bull and not telling the insurance company that it's a pit bull because it wouldn't be assured and it wouldn't be allowed to be a therapy dog in the school. So you possibly have a dog that is, even once it does, let's say, attack a kid at school, the insurance company is just going to deny the claim, saying that's not the dog that they were told that they were insuring, that the person submitted a claim for a breed or an insurance policy for a breed that isn't that dog. If you look at the certificate of insurance, and I emailed all this to you before the meeting, if you haven't had an opportunity to look at it, it's because it was only 2 hours ago, but if you look at the certificate of insurance, number one, you're not listed on there as an additional insured. That's a mistake. The school should be listed on there as an additional insured. If that person cancels the policy mid-term, the dog would be without insurance and you guys would know nothing about it. If you're listed as an additional insured, then the insurance company notifies you if the coverage stops. Second, you'll also notice that the location of the insured is a P.O. box in North Carolina, and they're using an LLC in order to insure the dog there. So I doubt the insurance company even knows that this is a therapy dog in Michigan and at TCAPS, and I'm sure if there is an incident, you're going to end up getting sued, and the insurance company is going to deny coverage, and we'll be on the hook for it. I don't want our dollars going to that, but more importantly, I don't want any kids to get attacked by this dog. Your application doesn't indicate on it, do you know, one thing your application should add, do you know of any propensity for violence that this dog has exhibited? Make the owner at least answer that question. And likewise, every time that they apply for the next year, they should have to update their recognition of whether the dog has attacked another person or another dog. So
Thank you, Mr. Kern. Your time is up.
Appreciate if you look into the dog. Thank you.
Next is Bill Wiesner.
Bill Wiesner, Traverse City, and I was glad to hear from the two students that spoke on this issue of homosexuality. And I think if this was allowed to be spoken of more, people would realize that I agree with them. No one should be physically bullying anyone, but there's a difference between physically bullying and communicating and disagreeing with someone. And it seems like for 20 years, 24 years I followed this, one side only has been introduced. In other words, this is people are born that way. Well, if you look at the real information, which TCAPS doesn't have in their libraries, there's not one book showing a compassionate view on the other side. There's 500 books, TC West, TC Central, 400, promoting the homosexuality as normal. It's very risky behavior, especially for the men. And there's reasons that that occurs. And one of them is environmental association with their father is oftentimes for the men hard. For some reason it doesn't click and they identify more with their mother and then they gain these attractions. But the information on both sides should be shown. Right now it's only one side. The librarians from TC West, TC Central were complaining about book banning, but the book banning is really one-sided. And those sexually explicit books listed on my website, tcfamily.org, you can go right to the table. There's 52 books listed. There's 37 of them in either TCAPS, TC West or TC Central. They're all sexually explicit. Not one of them should be shown, should be promoted to these kids. It's not something they should be learning. They can learn, like Scott said, elsewhere. There's plenty of places. We should be protecting them and not encouraging this. This is a picture of book burning in Nazi Germany, 1933. And people say it was the right side doing it, but actually the quote here from the book, this book, Nazi Germany's Dirtiest Secrets, and I hope some of you got it. We sent this information out to thousands of individuals. But a quote from here, why was it then, since we were completely a non-party, that our purely scientific institute was the first victim which fell to the new regime? The answer is simple. We knew too much. It would be against medical principles to provide a list of the Nazi leaders, but, he says, not 10% of the men who in 1933 took the fate of the Germany into their hands were sexually normal. Homosexuality was all over, and it's not good for them, and it's not good for society now. Thank you.
Mary Van Valen.
I'm Mary Van Valen, I live in the city, and I want to start by just thanking you for your service. This isn't an easy job you have, and I hope you know you're appreciated. I'm here because I noticed in the packet that you're going to be talking about an ad hoc committee to look at differences in academic achievement. And I just really hope that committee can take form and address what we're seeing in terms of just trying to balance out opportunities for all of our students. And we certainly have evidence from our report that we have a whole lot of kids that need something more. And so I hope you'll consider that committee. Thank you again.
All right, thank you. That is the end of public comment requests. We will move on to the next agenda item, which is the superintendent's report. Legislative update from Dr. Wagner.
Yes, so I had the opportunity to share some information from Lansing. The governor has put out her plans for the school aid budget of what her thoughts are. And they are definitely a lot of positive things there. that we've talked about and that we've shared with our staff on areas that we're continuing to try and advocate for. For instance, the transportation categorical of the 125 million is in her current budget, not increased, but it is in there. And definitely an increase in the per pupil foundation to 10,000 per student. Again, not quite the 500, we were hoping just a shy under 400. So, you know, there's definitely a lot of good there. There's still some areas that I want us to try and continue to look to advocate for. The mental health and school safety money was again 150 million versus the 300 million that was there 2 years ago. It's the same as the total last year. You might remember there was only 25 million originally. Then just before the election, it was added a supplemental of about 125 million. So the governor went with that number versus the original number of the 300 million, knowing the amount of staffing and things that we could use in that school safety and mental health dollars. That is something that I think we're going to continue to try and work with our Northern Michigan School Alliance to try and advocate for more funding in those areas. But again, a lot of good things in there for us to advocate for and continuing. It'll now be talked about with the House and the Senate. I will tell you that I think that there's not a ton of hope that we will have a school aid budget by July 1, even though we're required to have an adopted budget by July 1. It is probably more likely to be closer to October 1st, so which means we will start the school year without knowing what funds we have, most likely. I hope to be pleasantly surprised, but the speaker has already kind of tampered that, saying that it's not really required in law and that he expects that it's going to take that long. So we're going to continue to watch it. Again, I think advocating for all we can in the foundation, trying to increase that school mental health and school safety funding, at least keeping the transportation categorical, if not adding more. And again, those items that I shared with the board and our staff for all of us to continue to advocate for so that we have the resources that we need to not only continue what we're doing now, that's essential, but even if there was an ability to hire some more people to help again in those critical areas of mental health, school safety, with at-risk dollars that are there, all of those items. She has put in some money more for literacy that we're going to see the component, but with that, there's also a transparency component, mostly for districts that are failing in the bottom 5%, that are quite a bit, but we do expect there'll be some things that all districts will share with parents and others that are part of the metric that she's created, but we'll see again where the legislature agrees or disagrees and points of difference are and continue to work at that. So any questions on any of that?
I actually have a question about federal funding, because Michigan Association of Superintendents and Administrators and Michigan Association of School Board jointly had a webinar 2 weeks ago about navigating the federal executive orders, and they talked quite a bit, among other things, about Title I, Title II, Title III, you know, expecting that there could be some real cutbacks, if not eliminations, of those federal funding streams. I'm just wondering what you might have heard in the past 2 weeks along those lines.
Not a lot. You know, I think that the important thing has to be realized is obviously that has to go through the legislative and appropriation process, and there are many districts that, especially, you know, southern districts that have much more poverty than Michigan, that would be a real hurt for those states, even more than Michigan, that tend to be more red Republican districts. So I think that you know, we'll see where that lands. I'm more optimistic that because of that need across areas of the South and places such as Alaska, you know, that their legislators are going to be pretty keen still on making sure that students get those title dollars as a component. Could it be tweaked and for some things for such as vouchers, others that are there could be, you know, we're in a little bit of a wait and see pattern on that element.
And Title II is professional development, right? So that's something that we learned in curriculum committee that
Correct.
Our district has used funds for the instructional rounds. So that's also important. And I don't know, can you just speak briefly to Title III, what that is for us?
Our Title III dollars are,
Title III is the immigrant program.
yeah,
It's very low amount of funds, yeah.
yeah, but every dollar matters, and so we'll continue to look at that and work with our advocacy groups at the federal level and working with all of our legislators to make sure that they understand the realities of that, so.
$2 million or something in federal restricted funds.
That's our
in the
rule.
budget, is that correct? Last year?
No, we have way more than that, way more than that. Total?
Cause that's what I thought I was seeing when I was reviewing.
You thinking of Title II specifically, maybe?
No, it just said federal income revenue, federal restricted, from the budget, information that we got last year. So I was just kinda curious about that.
We'll share what that is, but it's much larger. I mean, I'm in the mindset total of our budget's around 20%. Christine, what do you think?
I would think so.
Somewhere right in there, of our total budget of federal dollars. When you take food service in, you take a lot of those elements in of all the title funding, it's in that neighborhood.
You get any clarifications on it?
I see what you're looking at. 3 million.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2 million, yeah. And it looked like it was a sizable drop just from the prior year.
Well, so what was that line item? Just to be clear to the public.
It's federal restricted money for our general fund revenue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
2.9.
Of the general fund right here. So.
Okay,
All right.
any other questions?
Okay, and then for district highlights, give you TC West and TC Central basketball's Fight the Freeze. Game is Friday, February 14th at West Senior High. Nicolay Bank is sponsoring tickets. Attendees are asked to bring cash donations, gift cards, or warm clothing for the TCAPS Student Support Network. West Senior High Wrestling, girls wrestling participated in the MHSA's first individual girls district tournament. TC West girls who moved on to regionals are Abby Dahl, Anna Beers, Addie DeGood, Annika Junker, and Alex Moser. And then on the boys' side, for the boys' individuals, 3 Titans qualified for individual regionals: Brady Vaughn, Matthew Quigley, and Gavin Brown. The boys' team won the MHSA districts in Marquette last week and will compete against Davison in regionals this Wednesday in Oxford. Central High School Student Athlete Leadership Organization, SALO, volunteered at the Special Olympic Games this past week at Grand Traverse Resort. SALO members are student athletes selected for leadership skills. They meet monthly, develop those skills, support other school clubs and teams, and work with future Trojans at our feeder schools and serve the community. Silver Lake Elementary School's Family Reading Night on January 28th was a success. With 113 attendees, the event featured reading activities for all grade levels. There was dinner and books for students to take home. West Middle School students engaged in rich learning experiences this month. Students showcased impressive vocabulary at the spelling bee with top spellers Finley Nolan, Sadie Ambrosius, and Roman Douglas earning honors. And then we had Mrs. Babbitts and Dr. Witt's classes commemorated International Holocaust Remembrance Day with a gallery walk-in discussions. Mrs. DeKett's digital media students gained real-world experience with designing travel cups for clients. And Mrs. Donahue's class celebrated Lunar New Year by creating festive lanterns. Westwood hosted 16 TCAPS elementary and middle school educators on January 28th for the instructional rounds district visit. I know that Trustee Ballinger was able to make that and be able to see those instructional rounds. I don't think anybody else, just as I thought. But a great work there and really excited about continuing instructional rounds across the district. Central High School's Key Club worked hard on the first weekend in February, pulling together 20,000 dried meals. These meals will be distributed locally through Father Fred. And on February 8th, 24 West Senior High band students participated in 17 events at the annual MSBOA District Solo and Ensemble Festival in Kingsley. 16 of those events received medals, 14 earned first division ratings. All students who earned first division ratings have now qualified for the State Solo and Ensemble Festival in March. So I know a lot of other things going on across the district as well. Robotics is getting ramped up, I know, soon and are in their build. And again, just ski teams I know are right in the midst of getting ready to start all their state tournaments. And so in the heat of winter sports kind of starting to get to those tournament times. And again, robotics will get going really in March with their tournaments. And so excited to see that. And again, we'll be hosting a regional at Central High School this year. So more to come on that. So that's what I have for district highlights.
What's the update on the opening of the two innovation and manufacturing centers?
The lab at the practice area at West Senior High will be available for the students to practice. The inspection's Thursday or Friday.
So it'll be fully open next
That's temporary occupancy, just so they can practice.
For the robotics team.
Yep.
And what about Central?
And so Central's a little bit further behind.
Right. Yeah, Central is further behind. We anticipate the first week of March, but our goal right now was to get West Senior High available so both teams can practice.
Okay.
Is the biggest problem the doors?
Some of it had to do with more of a fire rating. We had to remanufacture a couple of the doors based on the fire rating that was required by the fire department. And that required ordering different doors.
Okay, so last we heard at finance, it was gonna be end of January, possibly first week in February. Now it's early March.
The goal that we have been focused on is getting the bigger practice room at West Senior High available so that they can practice their robotics.
I met with the robotics team and folks, and so they had asked, they said, we're not ready for a move and all that. They said, we need practice space. So that right now was like our ultimate thing to try and get. They're inviting Central to come over from that standpoint to get that. But they are struggling still to complete, getting all the necessary materials and getting inspection set up, all that to be able to do that. And so right now, Central is definitely behind West. West is much closer to being, finished, but again, waiting for some components to be able to really finish it up from that standpoint. It's still gonna take a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, the teacher's focus is to move the week prior to spring break, so that's what we've been working on.
Is there anything that we can do as a district? Is this all the state inspection process or? I mean,
And materials.
It's everything, materials, labor, everything.
We're in every day, checking, looking.
And the robotics team from Central, do they have the transportation they need to get over?
They'll work at that for sure with it, so.
Yeah, they have a
When they
trailer
practice.
for their
Yep.
robotics.
Yep.
Alright. One update live in was the skiing results were Central did take the girls today, so.
Oh, good.
In the regions. And then Central and West, second and third in boys too, so. Both girls and
move on to
boys
state.
were in the top three, so yeah, move on.
Okay.
Congratulations.
We have a lot of snow to play in.
Yeah, it's a good.
It's been a great ski season.
I was just out at Shanny and it's definitely nicer than last year, so. Okay, any other questions? Moving on to board committee reports. First, board curriculum committee, January 28th, pointing up by trustee Ballinger.
Okay, so we called the meeting to order at 8:30 a.m. There were no public comments. We approved the meeting minutes from January 7th as posted. A new committee chair was appointed, given Erica Moore's move to Finance Committee, so I will now be the chair for this coming year. We approved our meeting schedule, however, we are sticking with Tuesdays, but we slightly adjusted our time to 15 minutes earlier to start at 8:15 a.m. And then in terms of agenda, Ms. Houghton presented a few updates and changes to our district course catalog. Mostly they were seeking approval of virtual classes, both middle school and high school levels, but I will give a shout out to a couple of in-person. Two are at NMC, the Pre-Cambrian Geology of Michigan, another introductory craft skills, and then also at our two primary high schools, an advanced placement research class. So those are new additions to our curriculum this year, and that has been moved to our consent calendar for approval this evening. Under informational items, Misty Warner, who is our district's director of whole child systems, basically notified us that there is a film called Screenagers, like Screen and Teenagers. But this is the elementary school edition, which is going to be shown at Central High's auditorium on Monday, March 3rd. Doors will open at 5 p.m. The film will run from 5:30 to approximately 7 p.m. So this is going to be promoted in all 11 of our elementary schools' newsletters, as well as the district's social media posts, and we trustees said we would do our part too to share on our Facebook pages. Again, this is an effort to help parents, students, families in general understand how technology and screens impact young people's lives, and of course will be shown at no cost. Moving on, we got to Traverse City High School. We got a nice overview by Principal Jen Chowick, talking about the growth that Traverse City High has experienced this year with their new Compass Learning Center. So I'll just kind of skim over some highlights here. First of all, to be clear, Traverse City High School still offers full-time in-person classes to students who are seeking an alternative path to complete their high school, get their degree. But they also now have all these virtual classes, and some kids are taking a mix or a blend. So she talked about the growth. There's been a big growth in the number of students enrolled. Fully virtually, it's jumped from 58 students to 129, just in 3 quarters so far. Meanwhile, in-person has slightly declined from 135 last year to about 115 currently. So you can see how it's more than balanced out with the uptick in the virtual. A nice positive for the in-person classes is that the average class used to be about 25 students per teacher. Now it's to about 12, which is more in line with national standards for academic success. And they're projecting a total of about 50 students graduating this year from TC High. And then we moved on to talk about instructional rounds with Mr. Tisworth, our Chief Academic Officer for elementary, providing an overview of what instructional rounds are. Basically, it's an opportunity where a host school will have about 25 to 30 teachers and administrators visit with a given purpose. For Long Lake Elementary, for example, they really wanted to focus on opportunities for the teachers to grow, but also really drive academic achievement for their students. So they get basically observed by educators who are peers. This is all within our district, and this is where Ms. Houghton talked about how this was used, the federal Title II funding, instead of coming out of our general fund. So after the instructional rounds observation period, then the teachers and administrators come together and they basically brainstorm in small groups, come up with their key takeaways and observations, present that to the host school staff, and that's where I was able to, immediately following curriculum, actually witness this at Westwoods Elementary School. And then lastly on the agenda, we had our usual celebrations and successes. And there were numerous items, many of which concerned our music department. So number 1, Central High School's chorale and East Middle School's 6th grade choir both won their divisions at the 106 KHQ Holiday Choir Competition and got checks for $1,000 each for their choral programs. Secondly, Cherry Knoll Elementary School Library received $1,500 from the Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation's TCAPS Excellence Endowment for new books. Third, they highlighted West Middle School and elementary schools celebrating Martin Luther King Day, which was, as you know, a new half day of instruction this year focusing on the life of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And fourth, there were 4 music teachers who recently presented education sessions to 2,000 music educators at a conference in Grand Rapids, and that was Emmerich D., Chad Melans, Kelsey Brunell, and Stephanie Shaw-Brazy. Fifth, the TC Titans Robotics got a shout out as they were launching their new season. Sixth, Montessori band and orchestra teachers Cress Smith and Stephen Bollinger. And lastly, Nick Nisley, the president of Northwestern Michigan College, gave a shout out to Blair Elementary School's instructional coach Emily Witt, who was also a recipient of the Compass Award tonight, for her partnership with NMC called Leadership Academy, which is for 4th and 5th graders. With that, we adjourn the meeting at 10:08 a.m. and our next board curriculum committee meeting will be Tuesday, February 25th at 8:15 a.m.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that? All right, then we'll move on to board finance and operations on January 30th, reporting out by trustee Raymond.
All right, we had a little bit longer of a meeting, so I will try to be brief. So we met on January 30th at 8:15 a.m. Dr. Van Wagner started the meeting as acting chair. We did not have anyone in attendance for public comments. Under procedural items, we did have a small change to the January 9th, 2025 committee meeting minutes. So those minutes were posted as amended. And then we had our appointment of committee chairperson, which was myself to be selected for that role. We then reviewed the meeting schedule. We are keeping the same Thursday 8:15 meeting time for the committee meetings this current year. We then had a discussion on the first budget amendment to the general fund and school service funds. There is a presentation on this tonight, so this was moved from committee to discussion, and we'll have obviously a lot more conversation about that here in a few minutes. The next item we moved on to bid services and purchases. The first item was for transportation, purchase of 5 77 passenger conventional school buses, and then 1 8-passenger, is it 88? Okay, 1 88-passenger transit bus, sorry. Those purchases also included 2-way radios, cameras, tablets, which is what we use the tablets for our security, so students can swipe their badges on and off the bus, so we know where they're at. And then computer for the mechanics for repairs. This item is for an amount not to exceed $1,046,127.05, and that's funded from capital bond funds transportation. The next purchase under capital projects is for Blair and Cortate Elementary lockers. These are to replace aging lockers, most of which I believe were original or at least 20 years old. So this recommend is to award for an amount not to exceed $246,000, which does include a 10% contingency, and that's funded from capital bond funds. That's under the consent agenda this evening. Next capital item is for elementary buildings and permanent walls. So this project includes construction of permanent walls to separate kind of a sliding accordion doors that are splitting a couple of the rooms at Cherry Knoll, Long Lake, and Willow Hill. And then at Silver Lake, they're gonna create a permanent wall to create an existing classroom into 2 smaller classrooms. So this project is for an amount not to exceed $161,590 and is also funded from capital bond funds and is on this evening's consent agenda. The next item is for Traverse Heights Elementary Classroom and Cafeteria Addition. So actually pretty exciting news for Traverse Heights, expanding their building by adding 3 classrooms, expanding the cafeteria, renovating the music room, and adding a new bathroom to an existing classroom. This item was moved to this evening's discussion agenda just to it's for an amount not to exceed $3,254,680. So just with the scope and the dollar amount, we just wanted anyone else that would like to have an opportunity for comment to have that. So it's under this evening's discussion agenda. The next item is West Senior High's circulation and driveway expansion. So this is expanding the West Senior High drive all the way around the building. It's actually going to happen in a couple of phases. New asphalt, new parking lot, new sidewalks, new snow melts, And then a little bit of a special update for expansion at Long Lake Elementary. Again, just the scope and the dollar amount, we moved this item to this evening's discussion agenda. This was for an amount not to exceed $4,458,366. The last item under capital projects was West Senior High restroom renovation. And so this is to move two group restrooms into individual single user stalls. So not changing the number of restrooms, just changing, from kind of group to individuals. So this amount was for, this project was for an amount not to exceed $575,740, also funded from capital bond funds and is on this evening's consent agenda. We then had our capital project update, which we actually had really the only couple of items that we've got going on right now are the manufacturing centers. So Trustee Ballinger already asked the question about when those would be available. We just went over the projects and pictures and where they're at right now. So again, waiting on some long lead items and state inspections. As Dr. Van Wagner, so our next agenda item was was for a finance update. Dr. Van Wagner mentioned this in his update that the governor put out her state budget. And so obviously continuing to monitor those developments and we'll provide updates as they come out. The next item under just general discussion was related to filter first requirements. So this is a statewide mandated drinking water management plan that's required for all Michigan schools and childcare centers. District-wide drinking water outlets audits were completed last summer. This really has to do with just clean drinking water, adding filters to source and then signage for what is drinkable water versus non-drinkable water, I guess. We then had a brief conversation just about school day on January 20th, 2025. That day, we did actually not meet the state requirement for the 75% attendance. So we either have to use one of our inclement weather days or potentially have a reduction in state funding for that day. So there's like I think it's like an odd calculation. So we actually don't know what the dollar amount potentially could be until the end of the year.
Yeah, not till August.
So, and then we had our standing item, just review of upcoming district purchases, which since the bond passed, there are a lot of, so we went through some of those items. So no other items were discussed. We adjourned at 9:26, and the next Board of Finance and Operations Committee meeting is February 27th at 8:15.
All right, thank you. Any questions on finance? I will do the executive committee report out, skipping some of the procedural items. We did talk about board policy updates, which were placed on consent calendar minus the one that was moved to discussion. And we also did go over agenda items for February 10th and February 24th, but hold on to that as we get to the discussion item because there's changes potentially plenty with some of the scheduling to discuss. Then as far as informational items, HR, Ms. Taylor shared that TCAPS is actually well staffed and it's typical for this time of year. We're starting to see some openings and it was picking up. We are currently have an opening for a plumber, numerous spring coaching opportunities, and obviously drivers, extended day staff, and special education teachers as well. Some of the ones that are obviously on every report that we're still working on. As far as communications, the Student Support Network update, we were able to offer assistance to 507 students throughout TCAPS and OUTS and other organizations as well. And we have already shared with the Fight the Freeze event taking place on February 14th at West Senior High during the West Central basketball game. And For enrollment, we do have a Power School pre-registration that is now open. And we are taking, that's where kindergartens and registers as well, so that is now on there, and the dates and information we posted on the district website for enrollment. And keep an eye on that as well. The next, I did also, on that, in advance, there was a request from a couple of board members to add the ad hoc committee, which is now on as a discussion item. So we can have that later today. And then the next board executive committee meeting is Thursday, February 27th, 4 p.m. in this room. All right, any questions on exec? Board office hours, I believe that January 23rd, but there's no.
My report out is that there was no report.
Okay.
So we had we were to have the meeting by Google. There was a technical snafu in which we didn't really know what was happening because there was a lot going on that night. And Tammy absolutely was trying her best to get me into the room so that I could answer, but it turns out that nobody showed up.
Okay.
So I kind of sat there anyway. We both sat on the phone for an hour, and so no harm, no foul. But I think we're looking forward to making sure that works for the future.
Yep. Well, thank you for being the testing that out and getting the kinks out of the way.
So much better you than me.
You're still going old school. You're going in person. Next up is February 27th. Trustee Pack is in attendance. We have now moved the location to the library on Woodmere. And that again is at 6 o'clock, 6 to 7 in person at the library, February 27th, Trustee Pack in attendance. And we are again alternating between virtual and on-premise to try and get as much engagement as we can, because we do want to hear feedback. Moving on to consent. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended?
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent calendar as amended and without discussion.
Second.
Right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. On to discussion item. We did add a discussion item, which is meeting schedule. So after we had the executive committee, there was a number of other changes, but one of them I would like to defer to Andrew.
All right, I have a letter that I would like to, I guess, just read. So dear school board members and Dr. Van Wagner, please accept this letter as resignation of my position on the TCAPS Board of Education effective February 11th, 2025. I have recently had a change in my professional career, which has already required significantly more of my time. While it's exciting for me personally, it is bittersweet as I have come to the necessary conclusion of resigning my seat on the TCAPS board. This decision was made after careful consideration, as I want to be fair to my fellow board members, administration and staff, and the students and families of this district. I know that I will no longer be able to dedicate the time and attention that I feel is required of me to this role. I have thoroughly enjoyed my 4+ years serving on the board and have appreciated the opportunity to support this school district. I'm very proud of how this board has handled the business of the district over my tenure. We have navigated an unprecedented global pandemic, enhanced student services, set a strategic direction with the Compass Plan, and helped pass a crucial capital levy that will help build and maintain the infrastructure needed for the students' success in the future. I want to thank my fellow board members, both current and past, for their dedication and professionalism, TCAPS administration and staff members for their assistance and attentiveness, and the TCAPS family and community members who supported me with their vote. Last but definitely not least, I want to thank my wife and family for their support and understanding as I performed this role, as it took me away from them on numerous occasions. I do hate resigning in the middle of a commitment that I've made, but again, I want to be fair to the district and to my family. I know that this decision will create additional unexpected work for the board, and I truly hope there are no hard feelings for that. I obviously do still have kids in the district, and I have every intention of still being very involved in their education, just in a less committed role. I know that exciting times are ahead, and I wish you all the best of luck as you guide the district through those.
Thank you. So first of all, before we go on to the discussion item, thank you. It's a lot of work, which obviously does not come with pay, so a little jealous, but I do greatly appreciate everything you've done and being such a
No one's forcing you to be here, Scott.
But then on to what that does affect is just so everyone's aware of the process is we have a 30-day window where we do have to appoint a new board member. And quite frankly, we haven't had a vacancy for the first 4 years that I was on the board.
Since I took a vacancy.
Yes, since Andrew was appointed. And so we do have to have a discussion of how we want that to work. We do have a couple of dates in play. February 24th, we currently have as a study session. However, I know that at least one board member cannot attend, and Andrew will not be with us too. So it maybe it sounds like the advisable thing would be for us to delay that until afterwards or later in the year, wherever that may fall. And that was kind of the direction of Tim Quinn when we met with him as well, that he thinks it would be beneficial to wait until after we have a new board member appointed and everyone can be there. So we also did have a March 3rd date that we cancelled, but we could reuse that date. So we do have to have one meeting. I would suggest, and this is where we get to the discussion portion, is how we want to do the appointment. I can't imagine that there's any other way that we want to publicly post this appointment and have people apply and have a process for determining that. And we would have to do so no later than our March 10th board meeting. So with that, the question comes is A, the selection process, and then B, the meeting date, whether it be February 24th or March 3rd. So I don't know if anyone wants to kick off with really again the process. My suggestion would be we have this posting that goes out fairly promptly. There's a period of time. It could come with a list of questions. It could be, if you want input, you could send them to me and I can put them together. We can have some discussion at the table of what those would be. Do need some guidance
for the application. For the application, as well as the interview.
So I would suggest that when you turn in the application, you have some standardized questions of why you want to be on the school board, things.
Or your
basic,
priorities.
Yeah, things that kind of like the questions that you would be asked during a kind of election cycle, that would come in writing to the board. So we have that to be based on. Then the question becomes is, do we use February 24th or March 3rd to do interviews? Or do we use that board meeting to whittle down the candidates and do interviews on March 10th? So two different ways to go. Erica's the only person I think been through.
Well, I was part of
Andrew can tell you.
You might have the best knowledge.
So I filled the vacancy, and it was actually like over the holidays. So we had, I think there were like 18 or 19 applicants, and they met and narrowed it down to, I want to say three or four people that interviewed. It was also virtual at that point in time. But yeah, so they used two separate meetings. They had a meeting where they narrowed it. They got answers to the questions that they put out when they put out the public notice that there was a vacancy. And then they used a meeting to narrow down to the three people from those questions. So it was just written answers to those questions. And then they had, verbal interviews at a second meeting.
Okay.
And I think you submitted your resume as well. People would, or and a cover letter probably. But yeah, go ahead.
And that was my biggest stumbling factor is like if you have 4 people who apply, I feel like you would do it, that you would just probably want to just do interviews and call it good in that one meeting. Whereas if you have a large number of people who apply, then you'll probably want to use that meeting to narrow it down. So obviously you can give some general guidance to how we do this as well. But I would like to know again, like is there any, at least, any alternative opinion to the fact that we're just gonna post this, we're gonna have people apply with standardized questions at least. And if anyone has any of those questions that they want considered, they can send them to
So you
us.
could use your executive committee.
I was just gonna say, we did a committee last time that did of the board to narrow down and then did the interviews at that
If
point,
you-
so that's an option as well.
Yes, if you make the deadline your executive committee date, if you only had 4 applicants, then you would know that the March 3rd, 10th date would be all you would need to do.
Okay. So we could do that where the March 3rd would be used as needed.
I think that's smart, because that, I really, the 24th doesn't really give enough time, I don't think we're.
Yeah, we again won't have all board members, so I think that's if anything, we would use the March 3rd to narrow it down. If it's not needed, then we would just do it on March 10th. Either way, we can say the final interviews would be March 10th.
And selection.
In selection,
Yeah.
And if we don't need to have that additional meeting, we don't have to have the additional meeting.
So could you remind us what's the next executive committee meeting and who will be there?
February 27th. But that would just be if you, I mean, you could just decide, like, if you only had 4, you know, if you had a smaller number, you would know by that meeting to say, yes, you needed to have a March 3rd meeting, or no, you would just do it at March 10th.
Right.
And it's kind of just based on numbers, of what a gut feeling of numbers would be.
But then at least then we're saying the final interview is gonna be on March 10th, so regardless of our process internally, everyone knows that that's when we're gonna be.
It's either interview them all or narrow it down in that committee.
Yep.
Okay. So February 27th, and that would be president, vice president, and 1 rotating member.
Yeah, but I think we would just be talking about whether we need to have that additional
Unless you
meeting.
have a lot of.
If we have a lot of meeting, then we'll be adding that meeting.
I see, the March 3rd, okay.
So I think we would hold the March 3rd date.
Makes sense.
And use it
That
if
makes
needed,
sense.
and if
Use it if
not,
needed.
Okay.
we'll bring everybody that applied on March 10th, if
And
if
really,
there's
it's
a
just to
smaller
let-
amount.
It's to let the applicants know whether or not there's a
Exactly.
narrowing down to,
Yeah, exactly, and that just gives the time to be transparent and allow everyone to know where the process is, but also have a definitive date of this is the time we will need you to interview.
Do we have a date certain of when people need to apply?
We can backtrack, it will be as late as possible, we can give people, it's at 4 PM. Well, I guess.
For paperwork, and everything, it'd be
Paperwork.
nice for maybe, if it's tomorrow, maybe the 27th, I'm just thinking, give us a day to get that Friday, the 28th, everything out to the board members,
well, you would wanna know by the executive committee though,
which is what day?
the 27th.
Oh, the 27th, okay. So then I would say we get everything out the 21st, is 2 weeks enough?
I think 2 weeks is fine.
Thoughts?
So applications have to
So,
be
so
in
we
by the
would,
21st.
yeah, we would get everything probably, you know, well.
No, we would have to, if we got
we
it
gotta
out,
Get the application, everything together.
if we got it out in 2 days' time, Wednesday, that would give everyone 2 weeks, which would be the 26th.
We'd have to get the application out the 12th, and if the deadline was like, 4 o'clock on the 26th.
I wonder if Wednesday, February 12th is realistic, that's day after tomorrow,
I know.
and you're asking for input of all
I
of
know.
us in terms of what would those key questions be. I feel like Friday might be more realistic for you.
I can also send you what was available when
We have it, I think.
Yeah.
We have all the
I was
questions,
gonna
we'll,
say, I
we'll
know,
send
I'm
out
pretty sure I
tomorrow.
have
Okay,
somewhere.
so we could look at it and then make suggestions.
I mean,
I
they're
would say
meant to
by
be
Friday.
pretty basic questions, they're not meant to be like, hi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you want input for the questions for the interviews too,
Well, I
or
just
that'd be
wanted to,
later?
I think that would be, we can do that later. If you, I think we can get through
We'll
that.
share out tomorrow what was done, and then if you have anything additional you really are passionate of wanting to think about on that application, get it to Scott, and then I'll confirm with Scott what that is, and we'll send it out as soon as we have it together from him.
Yeah, we'll get it out as soon as we can, and we'll close it at February 26th at 4 PM to allow us time for the meeting on February 27th.
The thing I also suggest we consider is some people, particularly in certain areas of finance, may need a little bit of time to go through their company to make sure that it's acceptable to the company. And sometimes the larger the company, the more time it takes to go through. So we don't wanna give it too short a period of time.
I know, that, it is unfortunate that we do have a very specific 30-day date to make an appointment. And so backtracking it with,
But it'll take certain people out
yeah,
accordingly, and those could be people that would be valuable
Yeah.
on the community.
I think, if you don't make Wednesday the 12th, and it's even Friday, it's a good 10 days, 12 days.
It is.
I think that's a really
And we'll make sure to get it out on all our
reasonable amount
social
of
media.
time for somebody to apply.
I'll ask the Record Eagle.
yeah,
Make sure we
and
get that in
obviously
there.
everyone is on notice. If
Mhm.
if someone is interested in applying,
Mhm.
they don't have to, they probably are gonna have to ask anyway before the official application comes out, so they can start working on that today if they're enthusiastic and ready to go, so. Yeah, so I think that's all we can do, so. Any other discussion on how that lines up, any other input? Again, this is a new process for us all, so.
Scott, I just wanna make sure it was clear so that the posting can be done before you guys are done looking at the questions, because once they start submitting their resumes or their applications, that's when the questions go, well, that's how we did it in the past. When they emailed their information, then the questions would go out to them.
Oh, okay.
So we can get it out, Tammy can get it like posted before you're done looking at questions.
That makes sense.
So we
'cause
can
that's
get it
kind
posted tomorrow
Yeah.
and then say, application will be open towards the end of the week, gives people the chance to talk with their employer in that element. Then once it's live, we'll make sure to put out there a message that it's live and ready, to complete.
So is that a Google form where they're just putting in their name, their email address, like as an expression of interest?
No, I just think we'll post it there so people will know. And then we'll say, but, towards the end of the week, maybe we'll even give a date, Thursday or Friday. We expect application to be posted and must be completed by the date, at 4:00. It at least lets everybody know the vacancy's out there to have those conversations. Then after they have that
As soon as
employer
possible.
conversation, they can begin to fill the application out.
Because they may even wanna know what kind of commitment are we talking about in terms of time.
Yeah.
For some of these folks that, are busy.
Okay, so I think that takes care of, then we would obviously left to be determined later is rescheduling Tim Quinn. And we've got a few other, I don't think we have to deal with them today, but we do have a few other study sessions with the two. We have 3 right now, but we may only need 2,
Yeah.
so.
And just on that topic, so we do have a kind of confirmation of space at the ISD at Northwest Ed. We do have confirmation from Dr. Nick Ziegler that his team's ready and we'll begin setting up some dates for focus groups. We have a first draft of questions that I just got Friday, haven't had a chance to look at them yet, for the surveys. So we're gonna, as a team, sit down tomorrow, start taking a look at that. I'll share those with the board so you can get a flavor of what those are from the professional survey company that we're working with. And right now we're on for a timeline. It looks like we can get it together to be able to have that first date that we have set up in April to be able to have our first session.
Alright.
And the groups that you're thinking of surveying are families, teachers separately, staff? All
Community
other
members.
employees? Okay,
And students.
okay, good.
Last time we did parents and community members on the same survey, the survey company thought it'd be a good idea to separate those. They wanted one separate for parents and they thought it'd be best to have one separate for community members outside, so there is that.
Did they consider at all having a survey go to the people that were recent graduates?
We don't have a lot of addresses and stuff for that. Is the hard part, so they would be able to as community members though.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See.
Okay.
Before we move on, Trustee Raymond, I just want to genuinely say thank you for your 4+ years of service. I've always really appreciated working with you on the Finance Committee and on the board at large, and I think, during those first couple of tumultuous years of our first term together, you really stood out on the masking dilemmas we had to face every month back then. As a hospital administrator, your voice was really important to us on the medical side of things. And then I also really appreciated how strongly you felt about the cell phone policy that we revised in the summer of 2023 and making sure that our kids are focused on learning and engagement, because that's what it's all about. So thank you again, and to your lovely wife and family for the sacrifice of your time.
I want to say thank you too. I've only known you a short while relatively, but I've always been struck by your care for the children. You always put them first, and really appreciate your financial mind, which I'm going to miss, and really want to uplift that you conducted yourself like a true gentleman every time I've seen you. So I really appreciate that. Thank you, and good luck.
Thanks. All right.
Live long and prosper.
So moving on, if there's no other comments about the schedule, and obviously clearly things to work out still as we move through the year, but we will move on to discussion item B, school safety update.
Okay, so the TCAPS Emergency Operations team recently met for the second time this year. This team is committed to ensuring a proactive approach to the emergency preparedness system that we have, and this team consistently evaluates and refines safety measures to protect student, staff, and our school community across the district. The team is comprised of a diverse group of professionals, including principals, both elementary and secondary, an elementary staff representative, a district nurse, a facilities operations manager, member of the Glen Lewis administrative team, and it's led by Patrick McManus. They're meeting at least once a quarter, and the team is engaging in comprehensive discussions about a range of critical topics. These include reviewing and updating emergency operations plans for each school, assessing the effectiveness of security management technologies, refining reunification procedures, staying informed about legal developments related to school safety, and identifying the most effective professional development opportunities for our district staff. Beyond these regular evaluations, the emergency operations team is dedicated to researching emerging best practices, collaborating with local law enforcement, and seeking innovative solutions to enhance school security. By staying ahead of potential threats and ensuring all protocols are up to date, the team is working to foster a culture of preparedness and resilience within the district. Through these efforts, TCAPS is reaffirming its commitment to maintaining a secure and supportive learning environment for our students and staff. So just wanted to give you that update. Just continuing to work and try and learn everything we can, and again, always wanting to be prepared, but hoping we don't need to.
Thank you. Moving on to item C, which is the amendment to the 2024-2025 general fund budgets and school service funds. Going to Dr. Lambright.
And I'll pass it to Christine.
So this is the slide that we shared with finance, and I updated it so it didn't create confusion at the top. Their original adopted budget back in June was a deficit of 4.4 million with our anticipated positive variance of 1.5. We did plan to draw just shy of $3 million from fund balance, which was planned. We've had some changes from June till now. There still will be changes from now until this June, but these are some of the highlights. They're not all inclusive, and they're not meant to add to get the total at the bottom, because we do have about 15 to 20,000 account codes. However, these are some of the highlights. We did sell Bertha Voss, excuse me. That net revenue was a little bit over $516,000. We had some changes, obviously, in our revenue per pupil because we had a decrease in students other than what we projected. The bottom line really is we're projecting a better outcome at the end of this school year, where we would only be drawing about $2 million from fund balance, not $3 million. And that still has a possibility of getting better than that by the time we adopt our final budget in June. Any questions?
Right way. All right, any other questions? Thank you. We do have to approve the amendment to the budget. I have a motion to do so.
I'll move that the Board of Education approve the amendment of the 24-25 general fund budgets and school service funds, food service programs, student school activities fund, and community services.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Tammy, please conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Schmidt,
Yes.
trustee Raymond,
Yes.
trustee Ballinger,
Yes.
trustee Bird,
Yes.
trustee Pack,
Yes.
and President Romell.
Yes, motion carries. Moving on to the next discussion item, which is now item D, board policy. Deferring to Dr. Waringa.
And I will go ahead and pass it on to Ken.
All right, in addition to the revised policies that you approved during consent agenda, as is normal, anytime we need new policies, we do bring those to the Board of Education for your review and discussion. The first couple on there, 3201A, financial management for federal funds. That's a brand new policy through Troon, and it's an optional policy. We did ask our business office to review, and because we do receive federal awards, it was at their advisement that the board go ahead and adopt that policy. And it's basically just the process and rules and regulations in which we would abide by, including internal cash management, and so on and so forth related to any federal awards. I don't think there's anything that stands out above that most of us laymen are gonna understand unless there's something that Christine Thomas Hill wants to point out to you. All right, the next policy on there is also a new policy to Troon, 3229, use of generative artificial intelligence. This one basically is just when we adopt our acceptable use policies for our technology in the district, as you can understand that those policies have been around a long time. There was no reference to artificial intelligence, AI, in that policy. So Troon just went ahead and adopted one, or created one for us, and it essentially is the acceptable use policy for AI. And basically, if you read through it, it just talks about how we're supposed to use it appropriately and for educational purposes. AI should be used to supplement and not used for exclusively for instruction. The teacher should use it as a tool and use so in a way that in compliance with the remainder of the board policy and the general acceptable use policy. So pretty generic, but just wants to point out that we had not previously referenced to AI in our acceptable use policies.
I appreciate how this policy references that employees must thoroughly review AI-generated material. You can't just rely on it. So I think that'll make a lot of people feel better about using AI.
Yeah, I agree with that. The only thing I noticed was that under section C for training, it says employees may receive training on the legal and ethical use of generative AI and its integration into the curriculum. Not every employee is going to choose to use generative AI, but it does seem to me that if they do so choose, we should expect them to receive that kind of training. So I wondered if in our administrative guidelines, because I understand this is a legal requirement in the main policy, if we could put something in our administrative guidelines that where we expect the teachers to get some training on the ethical and legal use.
I think that you have some contract issues with that. You would have to compensate for that time and recognize that. So I think there's some things we'd have to look in budget in that element before we could go and do that. We're obviously offering it, right now. But I do think that, that's a consideration we'd have to look at with bargain with our union group.
Yeah, and I think that's appropriate, a good point. Out of the 500 teachers we have, there are about 40 who attended that training this week voluntarily. That's 1/10, and
all for the cause, agree. Again, it's just when we require, that's a contractual issue that we'd have to work with. But definitely something we can take back and have a conversation then.
Okay, thank you.
You could also have discussions in staff meetings,
Less
formal.
Right, which we don't get a ton of time of, especially at the elementary level. So, there's always a lot of things from that standpoint that's there. But I think that team's gonna explore every way, shape, and form to do it. And then we'll look, and have conversations on, the requiring part versus the opportunity, that deal, but see what we can do. And if there are even grant dollars and things to help support coming forward in the future, possibly, that we can consider that.
All right, I'm gonna lump the next several together, the 4402, 4403, 4405, 4509, and 4503. All of these policies are the result of changes that have been made to the Michigan Revised School Code, sections 1248 and 1249. There was a huge revamp of those last year that went into effect on July 1, including the changing of a definition. I shouldn't say change, but more defining the definition, refining the definition of teacher as it's utilized in the school code. Right now, it makes specific throughout that when we talk about teacher, we're talking about the K-12 teacher of record. We also have teachers who are non-tenure eligible, in which several provisions of these wouldn't apply to, so it differentiates those. There's been a change in our evaluation system. Previously, we had 4 rating categories. We've gone down to 3 rating categories. So that is reflected throughout all of these different policies. In addition, we also have some appeal rights for evaluation that didn't previously exist. So I think Troon thought, rather than going and making significant revisions to the policy, you'll notice when we did the revised policies, those were all crossed out entirely, and they just replaced them with new policies to reflect all areas of placement, performance evaluation, reduction and recall, non-renewal, and again, performance evaluation of administrators. So unless there's specific questions, it's very similar to what we had previously. It only reflects the statutory changes made in sections 1248 and 1249 of the school code.
Okay, any questions as a group?
You made it real easy for us by highlighting those, so thank you.
Thank you to Kendall, that was her doing. So credit where credit is due.
And then we did add to this discussion item 3408 firearms and weapons.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I mean, I'm gonna support this. I'm not supportive of more guns in our schools. I get that the amendment is just making this in line with state law, which we have no control over. While reviewing the policy under permitted uses 2B, it's caught my eye that a person can get permission from the superintendent to carry on district property, and I asked the superintendent, because I was curious, like in what circumstance or an example would our superintendent give permission to someone to carry? And the example he shared did not involve more guns in our schools, which I'd like to hope that if that ever was the case, that we would know about it. So with that, I'll make a motion that the Board of Education approve policy 3201A, financial management for federal funds, 4229, use of generative AI, 4402, placement, 4403, performance evaluation, 4405, reduction of force recall, 4409, non-renewal, 4503, performance evaluation, and policy number 3408, firearms and weapons as presented.
A second.
Thank you for the perfect motion as well, and that is there any other discussion on the items? Then Tammy, please conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Schmidt,
Yes.
trustee Ballinger,
Yes.
trustee Bird,
Yes.
trustee Pack,
Yes.
trustee Raymond,
Yes.
and President Newman Vale.
Yes, motion carries. Moving on to the next discussion item, which is bids services. It is amended to remove the one project that was moved to consent. But other than that, I will defer to Dr. Van Weyman.
Yes, so I will go ahead and pass that to Christine.
So this item is a very large project. It's the West Senior High Circulation Project. It does also include a small addition of the driveway to Long Lake Elementary School. It's an extension of the right turn exit out of the building to kind of make that a little bit longer so people aren't stuck waiting for left-hand turnees. But the extents to which we're doing construction at West Senior High, it is planned over 2 summers. The first summer will take place major renovation at the light at Herkner Road. We had been asked and been working with the road commission to eliminate the second light we have for our current exit. So everything would be at Herkner Road. So we will have an entrance and an exit on Herkner Road. Included that with that will be a crosswalk and a sidewalk all the way to the school from there, and then another crosswalk on our property when it does cross over traffic. The first summer will be the front entrance with everything aligning to the light, a bus loop, and then to the left of that, right in front of the new Innovation and Manufacturing Center, will be a parking lot and parent drop-off. We're moving all the parking up to the building so people aren't crossing in front of vehicles. And then the next summer will be the other side, which will be staff and student parking, and then some modifications to the rest of the parking lot where the athletic entrance is. We'll have a small drop-off area for athletic buses. And then the existing parking lot by track and tennis will actually get a top coat. So that's a 2-summer project, pretty lengthy. This includes sidewalks, curbs, some extension of snow melt. We have some ADA parking right by the main entrance. I think that's it.
Good
It's still gonna remain one way, but it's going the correct way. Now that we have a dedicated bus loop, we don't have to go the way we're going right now to let students off the bus.
Good signing.
Yes. Signage is included in the package.
And the cost is for both phases.
Yes.
Okay.
As a former West High School parent, this makes me so happy. But thank you, because I know our parents have been asking for this for a long time, so thank you for getting it done. They're starting it.
Imagine growing up in England and then coming here and trying to remember, then going out to make money. I don't know what's going on. Every time I go there.
Am I right, am I wrong?
But the sidewalk issue, it's like, aside from the crazy, roundabout, but it's the sidewalk. That's.
Blacked her up.
We've had
Yeah.
numerous emails about the sidewalks
Over
over the years.
years, yeah. Very
And eliminating that second light will cause a lot of less congestion on North Long Lake Road too, so.
Confusion.
Yeah, that's always been a weird line.
Yeah.
Still a weird line.
Well, that is lots of good stuff. I know it doesn't look like one thing when you read the headline, but it is a lot of good things. Any other discussion or motion?
Sorry.
I was gonna make a motion, so.
I'm letting him make all the motions.
Yeah.
It's the
I just
last
had a
time.
quick question. So did you say the existing parking lot footprint would remain the same where it's the staff side, the Long Lake side parking lot? Will that remain the same?
No, all of the parking is being moved up. Instead of having the road in between the building and the parking, the road will come outside. And so all of the parking will be up next to the road.
Okay, so like that vacant land now, when you first enter on Long Lake Road?
We're not using much of that.
Okay.
It's the same footprint, but just a little bit of access on the outside for a new outside road.
Okay, it'll still be green space.
And you have
So-
a picture of it that we had sent earlier with the sidewalk. We had sent about a week or so ago, Ty had asked for it, so.
Okay.
I'll move that the Board of Education approve the contract for the West Senior High Circulation and Long Lake Driveway Expansion. Awarded as recommended by Miller Davis, construction manager for this project, for a total not to exceed $4,458,366. That does include a 10% contingency and is funded from capital bond funds.
I second.
Second? All right, Tammy, please note the roll call vote.
Trustee Raymond?
Yes.
Trustee Bird?
Yes.
Trustee Ballinger?
Yes.
Trustee Pack?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
And President Newman Bale?
Yes, motion carries. Moving, I think there's another.
Yep.
Item, yes.
The next one is Traverse Heights Elementary.
Thank you.
So this one is a 3-classroom addition on their north end. That is for lower L. So all of those classrooms will have a restroom inside them. We're also adding a restroom in between 2 existing classrooms. So those 2 classrooms will now have access to a shared restroom. And then an expansion of the existing cafeteria, which currently isn't big enough to house the number of students that we already have. So expanding that so that it is matching the size of other elementary schools. And then a renovation of the music area, the music classroom. The only thing not included in this is the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and we will bring that next month.
All right, any other questions on that item? Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the contract for Traverse Heights Elementary Classroom and Cafeteria addition to Hallmark Construction for a total not to exceed $3,254,680. That also includes 10% contingency and is funded from capital bond funds.
Second.
Tammy, please conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Raymond,
Yes.
trustee Pack,
Yes.
trustee Ballinger,
Yes.
trustee Bird,
Yes.
trustee Schmidt,
Yes.
and President Newlander.
Yes, motion carries.
I have a quick question for Dr. Van Wagner or Christine Thomas Hill, about Traverse Heights. It wouldn't have affected my vote, so that's why I didn't ask this before, but the growth at Traverse Heights, can one of you speak to the numbers there in terms of enrolled students? Because we've been talking in recent years about overall some declines, in student enrollment, but this is an elementary school where we actually have had some growth, and I just wondered if you could briefly touch on that.
I'll give a little bit, and then maybe she has better with numbers on it. But, I can tell you, when I first came to the district, I was very worried about having to close Traverse Heights. We were around 180 students.
Yeah, 179 students.
179 students when I first came, and so to see that turn around that we're now over 300 students, I think there's lots of things. I think that the staff, the principal, have done an awesome job of bringing a ton of energy to that building. That I think's there. I think that it is still one of the most affordable. I still don't know I can call it affordable areas of housing that is within the city, that we've seen, families be able to move into. And so I think that, you take all of those things combined, I think that there's a lot of people, maybe even that were in the neighborhood that weren't sending their kids there, that the excitement and all of that they've seen. Brian Kay's done a wonderful job of taking the staff and the culture, a part of, you all know, the house program and a part of his PBIS system that he's done. And, it's a wonderful, every year I get the chance to interview the student of the year, fifth grader, the groups, and every one of the kids, when you meet with them, will talk about the PBIS system there and the leadership component. And so I think all those things combined have just made it a really, really strong school that people want to send their kids to.
So over 50% increase in student enrollment in 4 years is what I heard.
No, not quite.
180 to 300?
Not quite.
Okay,
Yeah.
40%
Yeah.
increase roughly?
Strong though,
Okay.
strong.
So this would be how many classrooms exactly?
3
You
new
say
classrooms.
3? Okay, yeah, that's great. Well,
And
The
we
growth
do,
along the Frenier, we've had a lot of housing growth.
and more
along
going.
this, yeah. Expansion of King's Court to multiple apartment units.
And we have 2 Head Start classrooms in that building as well. So,
Plus a NMCA AGSRP classroom.
great. So it just goes to show what a difference a great administrator can make.
And staff. The teachers have embraced that and do a great job every day, and you go in that building and it is just full of energy. Sometimes a lot of energy, but they do a great job with that, and so it's good fun to see, really.
All right. So we've got, okay, then we are moving on to discussion item now F, ad hoc committee. I did send out a note with kind of some of the thought process, and I guess Ty, I'll let you kick it off first.
Well, thanks, Scott, and thanks, Holly, for the assist. And I'll start by saying, of all the wonderful positive things we're doing for kids furthest from opportunity in this district, including the Student Support Network, and that needs to be celebrated. However, when this 2024 annual education report came out, made public in early January, it became obvious that there is a lot of work to do for our kids who are economically disadvantaged. And this problem is not unique to TCAPS. A lot of the things aren't in our control as a board, but some are. And so this is something for us to do something about it as a body if we wish. I shared some ideas of what it could include, as far as scope for the committee, but ultimately that would be up to the ad hoc to determine. This will be a short-term, temporary, 2 or 3 month subcommittee of the board that will bring back recommendations to this body to set some attainable, reasonable, time-sensitive goals to move the needle on some of these outcomes for these economically disadvantaged kids. I also shared a Record Eagle story from 2015, 10 years ago from Cortaid. And that was the last time one of our buildings was nationally recognized as closing the student achievement gap, which is enough to celebrate. But the reason why I shared it was not only did they then close the gap between the low achievers and the high achievers, but everybody's scores increased. A rising tide lifts all boats. So I want to be clear that what I'm proposing is not taking away from high achievers. That this, if we're strategic and use best practice, and allocate some of our resources based on student need, that we can move the needle on this problem. So that is my proposal. Ideally, it comes back. I would like it to come back to us by our May meeting, if possible. It's not meant to be a study session. It's meant to bring action to the board. So that was my idea.
And I shared this with Ty, but since then I'll add a few updates as well. One of the things that I have is I think there's great interest. In fact, I don't think you necessarily have a problem with the concept. It's more about execution because and to be quite frank, I think virtually every member has indicated that they would like some in on it to some extent, which creates a problem because if we're talking about everyone wanting to be on it, then it's a board issue, not an ad hoc issue. Which I know why you don't want to do why you didn't want to do a study session, but you've also only seen, I think, one that all study sessions aren't created equal, and I think one of the study sessions we did several years ago was a strategic planning, which does include action. So I don't know. Again, my biggest thing is even if we're going to have something that all the board members care greatly about, we probably need to find a way to do it as a board rather than as an ad hoc. I don't want to use study sessions just a generic term, but I do think that maybe we need to get one of those on first and then break out after that. I don't know. I'm actually generally supportive of the concept though, and how you guys want to do it is.
Yeah, I would just also, I think back to what we did in the summer of 2023 with the cell phone policy where it took us 3 months from start to finish. I think from the first public comments of parents saying we want to see a different policy to then we asked the administration on the spot, hey, bring us some sample policies, and then we studied them. And then another meeting or so before we finalized it, and Connie Taylor worked with us to get our input and consulted lawyers and all that, but it took 3 months. That was not a study session, that was just regular board meetings. We did use our regular board meetings, but anyway, I could just see a lot of different ways that this could be shaped. Whether it's a study session or a subcommittee or full board regular. I think maybe the functions of breaking down what we would need to answer the very good objectives that you put together in your proposal, Ty, makes a lot of sense. Like, first we need a lot of data, I think, to be gathered for the board to study before the board can then discuss and make recommendations to administration for what we would like to see. So maybe that is, if we could kind of break that down into 2 or 3 chunks, then we could figure out collectively, well, how do we want to facilitate that information gathering?
Well, in 2-3 months is the idea, so 2 or 3 meetings. And I'm not an educator, I don't know this, but I know this room has some of those and who understands the best practice. I think the data is the outcomes, the data is that 133-page beast. So I think the data is clear, and I guess it's up to us how urgent we want to take this.
Well, I think, and on that point, I do think it's urgent, but one thing that I think we've all painfully learned is when you're in a government a publicly elected position, things move slower than we want them to be, even when we have control over the speed, and that's partly to do with the fact that we can't, like, you reached out, I couldn't have any real discussion, I talked to you, but we couldn't talk as a group until today. Which for most people in private world is like, we could have probably had this done by now. So I want to,
Well, and I'm happy to have the discussion, and I didn't know where it was gonna go either, but I wanted to take a swing. I do care deeply about it. I think we can do better with political will and public support. Will it be hard? Absolutely. Will it take a lot of work? Absolutely. I don't even need to be on it. So I'm curious if who's here is actually would serve on it.
I would. So, and here's my other, I do wanna discuss this a little bit more, because one of the things that I think is important about the language here and what my understanding of this is, it's not just looking at all of the things that could, make an inequitable situation for students or disadvantaged students. We kind of know what that is already. I think the biggest thing, and we've all talked about this for months, is the funding. We have social support network that does all kinds of work, but it's never enough, right?
And not really funded.
And not really funded. And to me, when we're talking about assessing ways to increase funding to close that gap, that's what we're talking about. It's actually more narrow than what we're discussing. And I think that's a great idea because, I mean, some of us have been doing work outside of this, just trying to get funds together or trying to work with grantors or whatever. I know I am, I've been doing that. So I think this is probably a good way for us to consolidate some of our efforts and say, this is what we need. These are needs that need to be met financially. And let's make these recommendations. Who's gonna go do what? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, and how we budget our values and how we allocate our resources equitably based on student need, which is part of our board of practice. And I would like to move the needle on, say, third grade reading. So 40% of our economically disadvantaged third grade readers are not proficient in reading. Nearly 8 out of 10 of our economically disadvantaged eighth graders are not proficient in reading, in math. So as we talk about all of our people working on certain things, like I'd like to take a stand and put ourselves on the hook and say, we in 1 year, 2 year, 3 years would like to see this metric improved by X, right? Yes, we're gonna provide warm clothes and food and personal hygiene items, but we're also gonna budget our values and we're going to allocate resources based on need. So, but again, that's just me, one person, and I think this ad hoc, and just because the ad hoc recommends something to the full board doesn't necessarily mean the full board will accept it or approve it.
Or can implement it.
Well, sure, I mean, it all has to be workable, right? And that's why we have our wonderful superintendent to execute on vision and goals and strategic priorities.
You're laughing at the wonderful part, aren't you?
I'm saying I would be delighted to contribute to this project with a bottle of Tums for the superintendent.
Well, I think that much like when we had our last study session, I think it would be good for the board, and this is gonna take time to really see exactly what we are doing right now. To have an idea of our schools that are more economically disadvantaged, of how staffing is being allocated, how title funds are being allocated, 31A at-risk dollars are being allocated, to kind of see that spectrum and say, oh, either we didn't know that or I don't know, that looks right. Or, to know our SSN, how much money do we get? What are we doing with that? How much are we raising? How much maybe should we try and raise? And what's a different way we redirect staff to maybe do that? So I think there's lots of things of, I would also not discount thinking about this in your strategic plan update that's going to happen soon as well. But I do think having an idea what's there, and then the board can give some input into, maybe we don't do that anymore and we do this, like Ty's saying, from a, what you allocate your resources to. But, in the short term, I don't know you all see, all those line items and the federal dollars of all that from that standpoint.
Andrew's got a great point, I
Well,
want him to.
And
So-
just so the students know, I know it's 8 and, but after this discussion item, then you can come up. We can finish this one up and then we'll do it, so yeah, that's fine.
maybe it might not be and again, this is my last meeting, so take this for what it's worth, but, you know, one of our, strategic plan goals was, provide additional resources and supports for diverse learners so that all students can be successful. So maybe, I know the plan right now is to have, study sessions in April to renew and update the strategic plan, but maybe you do between now and April, you have this ad hoc committee that 3 of the board members are more versed in what has gone into that, so that when you go to revisit the strategic plan, you at least have 3 of the board members that are more well versed in what it would take and what's currently happening and what's available to happen.
Yeah, I mean, current state is a good point to John's point, like what is the current state? And then, you know, it's on us, what is the desired state?
Yeah, and that's what you put in the updated strategic plan is, you know, when you're focused on whatever
Yeah,
those goals
I
are.
would support that, that's a friendly amendment, I support that, Andrew.
And that's why I guess, yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do this, so
Mhm.
I do need the board to kind of come up with this one idea. I'm okay with whatever. Again, I do believe that the number of people, everyone at least had a desire, or at least a verbal desire to think about one, to be honest.
To a certain degree, we've addressed it in a couple of study sessions. I think that what makes this proposal perhaps a bit different is we kind of suggested that we would like a study session that then the staff decided what we needed to know, and they filled it in. But the questions that we asked, a lot of times were kind of secondary to the information that we got, if that makes sense. And I think that with ties, we're back to how do you say these are the sorts of questions that we think need to be answered, and we're directing it with the caveat that we do not run the schools, that the superintendent runs the schools. All we can do is gather the information. So the practicality of some of this becomes important. The other thing is, I think that sometimes we have some resources that we don't always think of, that we don't use. So one of the things I really like at Traverse Heights is that you see the cooperation of the older students with the younger students. And that can reinforce in 2 ways on some of the learning. You know, so whether you have students that tutor a bit more or do some innovative things, it reinforces what they are doing, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need a whole lot more money and a lot more staff. So there may be some innovative things that we could do that would be practical and actually build community. So those are things. I think we do have to get good data because I've seen an awful lot of projects where you see what the problem is, but you don't know how the problem configures. And so you never figure out what the moving parts are. So you throw money at it, and a lot of times you really don't accomplish a whole lot. I think that's particularly true in publicly funded programs. So I think we have to be careful with that.
Would the board oppose if we just sign the students' papers now?
So,
and then,
so probably best really to actually Robert's rule here, okay? Relax, is we really should take just a
5-minute break.
5-minute break.
Recess.
A recess and do this, and then it's the really way we should do it.
No, yeah, I
And then
hate to do them in the middle.
to do that, and then come back to order in that element, so just something new that somebody put across me that
No, I know technically, yeah, so
That's fine.
it's okay, so we will take a 5-minute recess. If you would like to come up and you need a form signed, come up and we can sign them for you right now. And then, that's fine. Board is ready to restart. We can certainly restart a little earlier. So we were discussing item and we will return to the discussion item, which was obviously the ad hoc committee or how to handle this. I think the general gist is that I think there's a united desire to do something here, and then the question again just comes to how. So we do have to have a decision. I feel like there's so much information that we do need to know first that we all should get that information and then figure out how to deal with it. That does slow down your timeline, but at the same time I do think that we're really looking, this is gonna be a long-term thing. It should be part of the strategic plan as well, which we're going through. That can be part of the discussion process as well. So again, I'm okay to do whatever every board member, but my preference would be to start with a study session to get a lot of that data on the paper, and then out of that study session, have a commitment to.
Would the study
go away
sessions
to.
be any different than the 3 we had last year on student achievement?
Yeah, the student achievement was pure, there was a lot of data. I think we can give guidance to tailor that study session to get the data that we need.
But
to figure out the
this wasn't
process.
presented then?
I think a lot of the funding. I think we looked at sheer data.
I'm not talking about
think it was as
funding, I guess
specific,
I'm
'cause-
talking about outcomes is what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. And whether it's a financial solution or like if you look at the Corte talking about data-driven instructional practices. But I just wanna be clear, I'm not talking about fundraising, I'm talking about outcomes.
I agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
I really do.
And some of it will take money. But again, I'm fine with if we wanna wait but I also don't wanna study it to death, I feel like I've watched the 3 achievement ones from last year.
And they were interesting,
For sure.
but they were not.
But again, that's, I think where you're getting off is like we can set, when we set a study session, we do give of what the objective outcome was. So that the objective of that outcome was to get that data. That's what we asked for and that's what we got given. So like we've also again had study sessions with strategic planning. We've had plenty of other study sessions in the past that do lead to different things. So I don't want, that's kind of why I say I don't want the idea of a study session being somewhere that something goes to study it to death or that something goes to die or just hear info on is not really, I mean, to be honest, we've only been getting back into study sessions recently because of that and because of during COVID, we kind of went away from and everything was just what's gonna happen today. But I'm okay with it, again, any alternative proposal. I do wanna make sure we leave staff enough time to prepare for anything.
One of the things I'd mention is, appreciate, what Ty is thinking, to at least know the resources that are there now, if it ever, we go through mission-based budget with every building principal. If there's any of those meetings that board members would wanna sit in to be able to hear that and see how that is and what those resources are, that's something that we can make sure to let you know when they are. and welcome to sit in on when we have that conversation of what we're thinking their federal dollars are, so you can see building by building what that looks like. Open invitation on any of those from that standpoint to see that. So if there are any specific data points, mission-based budget.
Yeah, they're already scheduled.
Yeah.
End of March, right after spring break.
You know, and I like, for example, I'd be curious of Traverse Heights, so we're adding 3 lower L classrooms for next year, right? So one of the strategies could be like, so it's one of our Title I schools. You know, could we have less splits, say, in lower L because of these new classrooms? For example, like how do we treat splits in Title I schools? How do we treat classroom size in Title I schools?
Yes.
So it's, and you know, I guess I'm fine sitting in on meetings, because I also watch the mission-based budgeting study session, right? And I get it, but again, you know, we are in charge of the budget and how we allocate resources. And budget season will be up here really quickly. That's why I proposed the May meeting.
I think we're already well in budget
Or
session.
well in
That's
it.
the
Yeah,
problem
I mean,
that
well
was
in it.
kinda.
And I just,
We're never out of it.
Yeah, and that's the other part though too, is like that we are never out of it and there's always changes, so like, I don't think there's ever nearly a good time to start anyway. I think we should start as practically as soon as we can. But that's kind of why I gave that, like, I worry about setting a timeline because these things do take a lot longer than they should, so.
And you know, I think it'd be good for you to see the, because I'd argue that our title buildings, like especially Blair, and you know, they get right off the top of FT and general fund dollars, above and beyond all the other buildings. Plus they're at risk, plus they're title.
I will ask, is that enough, I guess?
And it's a good point, you know, but just to give you an idea of what that is, you know, and is your priority to take away from one to give to more?
Yeah.
That's a board decision from that standpoint, you know? We put that out there from, you know, every kid has to have a classroom and a teacher. You kind of have to start from there. And then you go, okay, what's those fringes that you have? And a lot of times, again, the buildings have their Title I dollars or they're at risk that's directed to that building based on their student population. And that is what we use to direct a lot of that. And again, if the board wanted to change some of those perspectives, but I think it would be important for the board to understand what those are.
Sure.
You know, to be able to make that decision from that standpoint. You know, we do it based on what we think our professional judgment is to try and do that as equitably as possible, you know, with that in mind. But if the board thinks differently, I think it's important for the board to look at that and understand that and know what that is.
So I have a couple of thoughts. One is the Title I funding issue. That's just really bothering me at the federal level. I feel personally very nervous about the future, and so I am right there with you, Ty, in terms of trying to think how we can close the achievement gap. But if the intention is that we as a board would make a recommendation to administration to allocate dollars, and then, you know, we find out next week that the current administration is not going to support Title I anymore, you know, everything is upended. So I just wanted to, that's not to shoot anything down, I just wanted to share that is a very real concern I have. And it just messes with the timing of this. But the other thing is just best practices nationally. You know, I always think that is great for TCAPS if we look, you know, to other districts and nationally through our associations and all the professional networks that our administrators and teachers have. Just in this district alone, we talk about all these things that we employ to boost academic achievement. We have professional development for our staff, we have collaborative routines, we have instructional rounds, we have tutoring, we have mentoring, we have interventional behavioral coaches. Like, we have all of these techniques that are all intended to boost student achievement. But if we can't afford them all, we should have a better idea of which ones are the most cost effective, which ones really are making the biggest impact. And I think that's the data that we don't have as a board.
Do we currently have outcomes as a goal? Do we have any specific outcomes?
Excellent question, because I've asked that in curriculum. When we buy a new curriculum, what is our expectation to achieve with that curriculum? And I don't think we have
All those
gotten-
things are wonderful, but to what end, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And again, I'm not here to blame teachers or administration, but I do want us
It's tough.
to, again, look at some of those numbers that I shared, and then ask yourself if you're okay with those numbers. Because I'm not.
Yeah, I think no one is, and that's why I think everyone is excited about it, but that's also again why I think it comes back down to the board needing to do it.
I also wonder if we need to look at it, elementary sort of first, because I think that kids are so different between high school and elementary. And I think how you address the problem is gonna be different. So I'm wondering if that would be at all useful as well, because I think elementary is what you,
I
is
don't
your
know, I don't know
foundation.
much, but I do know earlier the better.
Yes,
Right.
and yeah, that's your foundation.
So if that would make sense to narrow the scope, like if it seems like too much of a beast, then we wanna focus on earlier the better and third grade reading, like, I'd love that.
And third grade math,
And third grade math.
run them both.
So I'm wondering though, if like the ask of administration is, give us some data that we can't get from MI school data, right? That where, from which, you know, you cited these numbers. So that we can make some informed decisions and recommendations about what we think our priorities should be as a district, where our funding should go.
Well, I mean, so I mean, 58% of all of our third graders are proficient in reading. 40% of our economically disadvantaged third graders are proficient in reading. So we can set the goal at, I don't know, 45%, 50% in 3 years. What do we need to get there? I'm not sure. I'm not an educator. I'm not a professional. We have a wonderful team that we will consult and ask. What do we need to do to get to 45%?
Which again, part of the problem, I'm trying to figure out how to tie the two together, but like that exact thing is what we talk about in strategic planning too.
Well, and I guess I'm
merge the two
confused why there's no outcome in our strategic plan. There's nothing that
Well,
talks about.
the first thing I'd give you is the first one that had been done in a long time, you know, from that aspect. And so I think there was a lot of getting systems in place and those kind of things of you know, curriculums that we didn't have documented, those kind of things. So I think, you know, the board's always thought that 2.0 was the next step
And if
from
this
that standpoint.
conversation leads to that, I'm fine. You know, this is the first time we've had this, so I don't expect all of a sudden we're gonna change. and-
Also, remember the timing of that strategic planning was coming out of COVID with a lot of unknowns where the
Well,
numbers were hard to measure.
And these numbers right now, it should have a big asterisk by them because they're all coming out of COVID. I know that, everybody knows that,
But it
right?
was harder it's harder to talk about specific outcomes when you don't even know how much learning, you know, you're still trying to figure out how many kids are back because of learning loss and
Sure.
like that's really.
But there's some studies, you know, I can't
Oh.
talk a lot about this, that I got called from the Detroit News last week that there's a study that's coming out this next week that shows us very high in the state, both in math and reading, increases back to the levels pre-COVID. And we're one of the few districts that's the case.
Great.
Again, not the mark I think we want, you know, and that was exactly my quote in there. I said, great, we have some things, you know, Blair right now is having some great achievement, you know, change, but again, isn't enough, is it? What do we aspire to be? Even if we don't make the goal, what do we aspire to be? You know, I think that's what Ty's getting at a little bit, and then figure the resources from that standpoint, but I do think simultaneously to understand, helping give us some direction to try and meet that goal. You know, there's things that you're gonna have to maybe say we don't do anymore, you know, that some people might be upset about, you know, cause there's, you know, I always say that this is like spinning plates, that you try and give a little bit here, a little bit there, and we try to give more to those buildings that have more kids in poverty, but I tell you all the time that one of the hardest parts about this is stretching every dollar. But again, are there things that are the best mentioned that don't cost anything, you know? I think those are some insights that would love to hear from the board. You know, if you have a goal in mind you wanna try and reach, then we gotta try and talk about then at that point, at least what are resources to do that. So at least in that time period, at some point, it's gonna be important for the board to give very specific data you want, so that in some time for us to be able to share that with you, if we're able to see what we're doing now. And then at some point to talk about what we wouldn't do to try and put more resources towards something if you think that's your
Well,
prerogative.
just remember, we've done this before. It's been 10 years, and I think we can do it again as a district, and not building by building, but as a district.
So again, like to move forward though on it, cause I don't disagree with any of it, but like, we've gotta figure out how to move forward on this particular item.
Do you want me to make a motion, or does someone wanna make a motion?
You're welcome to make a motion, I don't know if there's
I
a
won't, 'cause it's my
consensus
idea.
yet, but, I'm open to, again, someone has to try out an idea at this point.
I mean, I would just go back to what I said earlier. I mean, I think, and I totally understand that there's a lot of data and a lot of work that's happening on this specific metric of the Compass plan. But as you're going in, I think it's if this is what you really want to focus on going into the revision and the updating of the Compass plan for this next cycle for 3 years, like, you know, it's probably not a terrible idea to have, if you can get 2 or 3 ad hoc committee meetings in before you start getting into the survey data and the actual study sessions for the updated strategic plan. That would give you some background information on what's an appropriate target. Not like what's an easy target to get to, but what's a stretch target for us to get to. It just, you know, otherwise we're gonna be sitting here talking for another hour. But I mean, I think that that's a reasonable thing is, you know, like let's have a couple of committee meetings and then at least 3 of you go into that strategic planning session knowing like this is the background information and these are reasonable goals.
The only caveat I'll give to that is like for the strategic plan for the surveys, we got about a week to get that done on the timeline you have now. You know, just giving you that caveat if you're gonna add something. There's a week to
change anything.
Yeah, I think I would leave that as total separate thing. I really would. But I think we should really focus on elementary. And even if we look at K or pre-K to second or third grade and really look at what's going on, to your thought about moving resources around, I think we're a ways from there.
Yeah, and you know, that's the hard work. I mean, we're almost there right now, but again, I don't think it would hurt, and again, the invitation's open to, you know, to learn what those are. So, you know, what we are doing now, that you may go, oh, that's enough, or no, that's not enough, or okay, if we give more, oh, I just heard that they get this, and maybe is that the best place for it? You know, just the invitation's out there if you wanna hear that.
Because, I mean, I fully was in support of what was coming out of Eastern. You know, I didn't want to see split classrooms. I wouldn't want to teach one.
I understand, but.
So moving, again, like I think these are
Financial
moving points.
resources are hard, you know.
How about this to merge the proposals, and again, I would take a no, this isn't achieving what the objective is, but I do think it's important to do it through strategic planning. It's the ideal position to do it in, and it's literally coming up in April, so this is where we should deal with the specifics. But to Andrew's point, we don't even know what the specifics should be and what the goals are. So it's kind of a cross between an ad hoc and a regular board meeting, because I know everyone says that they want to be there, but scheduling is going to be difficult. So I would suggest we choose a date in March, which I realize is spring break at the end. And we've got a March 10th board meeting, so we could literally pick a date around the 17th. We won't do that because it's St. Patrick's Day, but we could do it doesn't have to be a Monday. We can just choose a day that works and is convenient, schedule it, study session, get the data out, use that.
First day of spring.
What's that, 21st? 20th?
That's the day before spring break, isn't it?
So yeah, so you'd have to, that's just, again, I guess we can, if that's acceptable, then we can figure out a date. But I would suggest that we have a meeting, study session in there. Any board member who wants to attend can come. I understand if you don't want to, but that way we don't have to have an ad hoc. You don't technically, I don't even know if you need well, you would need I guess for the basics.
You would need a quorum if it's a board meeting.
Yeah.
However, if the board gave me some direction that if there wasn't enough, we didn't think to make it a committee meeting.
Yeah.
An ad hoc, but yeah, otherwise if we have 4 members that show up, we'll plan it initially as a board meeting, but if some reason numbers change, we could go with that lower.
Yeah.
We would just, you know, we just have to cancel it from that standpoint.
Yeah, we'll cancel it and put an ad hoc or committee. That
Sounds
way,
good, pick a date, yeah.
yeah,
pick
that
a
way
date.
I'm trying to jive, because I think it's important to get a meeting in before strategic planning.
I agree.
And then and to do that, I think there's.
I agree.
And it'll be after your new board member,
Yes, it will.
which also would be
That was one of the, I was gonna wait to do this, but this is one of the reasons that I did it tonight was because I knew that the strategic planning. and
So
all
you're
that
already
was
giving them
coming
more
up.
work when you're leaving.
No, well, theoretically to have someone here that was here the whole time.
I do not have the district calendar to know what dates you guys can even do, what works for you outside of Mondays.
And when you say you guys, who all do you want?
I think that would depend on the date. I think we can get those questions. You did give a nice, like, some of the questions, so that would be a good start.
Do you want to purely focus academic? Do you want business, resources? Do you want,
I think we could start with academics.
Yeah, I
mean,
think.
this is
Jesse
about
Houghton and Dan Ticewell.
Jesse would be secondary, so it'd be Dan
Oh.
and probably,
or just Dan,
and
Dan
probably-
and,
Brittany.
and Brittany,
Brittany.
yeah.
Brittany and Dan.
Kay.
Yep.
Brittany.
Can do
Kay,
that.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so there we go. So we got that. We'll set it as a board meeting, study session board meeting.
Optional.
Yeah, optional. And if we don't, and we will ask you to say if you're coming or not. And if we don't have enough, then we will set it as a committee meeting.
And permission that we could
So
ask.
Dan is on vacation that day, right?
Yeah.
I just.
Which day?
The 20th?
Oh, it's.
Can we
you're
look
saying
earlier in the
before
week, like
before, yeah,
the 18th or 19th?
18th, I think could work. And Dan, are you on?
18th.
No.
He is.
Yeah, I'm here.
Dan, what days would work for you and Brittany? Do you know that 18th or 19th?
I'm gonna check it right now, we will be,
Where to?
18th. Yeah, 18th, if I were to choose one, it'd be the 18th. It's a tough one. I'm meeting with, all principals that week before spring break, the 8 non-city schools, on open enrollment. I was meeting on just as far as we're talking timeline, Sandy, Jesse, and I are meeting on March 7th to talk about mission-based budget for elementary schools, so I don't know what's, if we're talking about finances versus outcomes.
And I think we're really talking outcomes and academic only at this point in this conversation, that day, Dan.
Yeah.
So really just you and Brittany is all I think the board's looking at, probably needing there at that point. For initial conversation, dig in.
6 o'clock.
Yeah, that's good.
6 o'clock or 5 o'clock, preference.
Doesn't matter.
I'm just, if you have a need or anyone has a need, that's fine. I do not. I will do whatever.
Ditto.
5:30.
You need it later? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no,
Okay.
I was just
Oh.
saying, are we doing it at
So
6 o'clock?
what
We
time?
have a meeting, I have a student advisory till 4:45, and then you and I are supposed to be meeting
On the 18th?
till 5:15. Oh, maybe that's the student advisory.
It's February 18th.
That's February. We're talking March.
Oh.
Tuesday, March 18th.
That's helpful.
Tuesday, March
Alright.
18th, right?
Yeah.
So on that,
When you do
Dan,
them,
does Dan have a preference on time?
Dan, you have a preference on time?
I don't.
Okay. So I don't get it.
6 o'clock, talking Tuesday?
Just to make sure and not be so late, 5 o'clock, would that
Yeah.
work?
I think so.
That's what I'm saying.
And
I
we
don't-
can get like sandwiches or something if that
Yeah.
helps,
That's great.
for members, and I'll have Tammy work with you guys for an RSVP to kind of know who's, and we'll work on something from that standpoint.
Okay, so the 18th of March, 5 p.m. will be a study session of the board on this topic. And if the board would allow, if we do not have enough attendance, which we'll know ahead of time, we will change it to a committee meeting, and the board would be okay with that as well.
Otherwise, it's essentially a committee of the whole.
That's what I was trying to figure out if we needed.
Just confuse us.
How would we have a meeting, a committee meeting, unless we create an ad hoc if needed?
At that point, it would just be whatever members were able to attend.
Make a motion and do it then?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the motion should be technically that we call we call the board meeting.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we
Why don't we make
call
a
it a
motion
meeting
now?
for now? And then we'll get a better gauge as we get closer on who's gonna be there.
Yep.
And then if some point we don't think there's a quorum, I'll work with you at that point to post for a committee meeting.
I'm confident we're gonna have a
Meeting on
quorum.
March
I feel
10th.
like we're
Can
gonna
I
have a
just make a motion
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that we have a study session on March 18th at 5 p.m. to discuss outcomes, student outcomes and achievement at the elementary level. If for some reason we don't have a quorum, that become an ad hoc committee meeting on the same subject.
I think that will cover it.
And you're giving me the discretion if we feel there won't be enough board members to do so.
Correct.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. I think we've discussed it plenty, but if anyone has anything, other than that, please, Tammy, please conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Byrd?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Trustee Ballinger?
Yes.
Trustee Pat?
Yes.
Trustee Raymond?
Yes.
And President Newman Bale?
Yes, motion carries.
Superintendent Van Wagner, I just wanna add one more thing. If there is a district that you know about, or any of your peers know about, where they've really addressed, at-risk students and grown academic achievement, close the achievement gap, however you wanna phrase it. Or if there's a conference that you're going to, any kind of opportunity for us as a board, I think that would really be beneficial. It doesn't have to be obviously in the next 3 months, it could be in any, you can't control the timing of a conference, for example, but you took us to, a subset of us to Kettle Moraine School District a few years ago to see and learn about project-based learning. That was so incredibly helpful.
Sure.
For us to understand what we were doing in standing up academic communities. And so I think that I would welcome the opportunity to, visit a district and.
Especially somebody like us with the same resources and, because, just do recognize there are districts that get, with poverty, $25,000 a student with federal funds. Will it stay that way? I don't know, but, so like finding a light district, in that element is something that, we'll work at trying to identify that if there is in the state or even somewhere out of the state.
But they took a group of kids, poverty in Harlem, and they put them in a charter school.
The Harlem Children's Zone. Been there.
And those kids are amazing.
But Jeffrey Kennedy raised about $50,000, I think, per student to be able to do that. I had the chance to have dinner with Jeffrey Kennedy.
I would
to
very
talk
much
about it.
like to know how that broke
Yeah.
down. I'd also
They
like
a
to
ton
know.
of resources they raised to be able to do that, but did great work, phenomenal.
Now, just to bring this back down, I've got to make a decision here, so
Oh,
either we're
yes, you
gonna
gotta go.
close out, or I have to allocate a new chair, so I'm okay with either one.
That's fine, no, we can move on. We can move
I
on.
do have one quick thing,
Alright.
but I know that we've got a public comment here, we have to call quick too.
Yep.
But I do want to go a correction of something I had said publicly. I had the chance to meet with Alyssa Slotkin and last Saturday, and I'm not sure if I was misquoted or I said it wrong, but to put on the record straight, we have about, we've had roughly close to 500 students in our McKinney-Vento program that we run that are homeless. Those are not all TCAPS kids.
Right.
Okay, that's about, we're about 270, we're right around our TCAPS kids in that element. We do have over 500 in our student support network in that element, but I want to make sure that we do run that program and do all the support and all that. Katie is kind of, her and team and Ginger's team's a one-person show, with, or a one group show that does that work, but, again, that's kind of there are other students from other schools that are a part of the McKinney-Vento program with that. So I just want to make sure I'm good to clearly identify. But again, we have lots of kids in needs, and we are well over half of the kids in that number that do fall under homeless components that are TCAP kids. But
And still a shockingly high number.
yeah, yep.
And I would personally like to encourage anybody with deep pockets to donate to the Student Support Network as soon as you can, and a lot.
All right, so anything else, and I think we're closed out on that topic. Moving on to public comment, is there additional public comment?
There's not.
Okay. So closing remarks, again, I feel like there's nothing else to add other than thanks again to Andrew. This would be last meeting and definitely bittersweet, but thank you for serving and a pleasure serving with you. So There will be a posting on the website within the next few days, but the candidates will be asked to interview on March 10th at the regular board meeting with more information to come shortly. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
A second.
Second, Beth, alright, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The next Board of Education meeting will be Monday, February 24th at 6 p.m. And it, oh no, it won't
No,
be.
I think it's March 10th.
It will now be, what are we on now, March 10th, probably. March 10th, 2025 at 6 p.m. In this room, so appreciate it, and the meeting is adjourned.